All right, let's get started here. Thank you everyone for joining today. This webinar is hosted by GoldSky Cybersecurity in Digital Hands. GoldSky is a national cybersecurity advisory firm that exists to support public and private sector, small and mid-sized businesses in their quest to meet today's IT security best practice adoption demand while achieving compliance mandates. Digital Hands is a trusted global award-winning cybersecurity service provider focused on delivering 24/7 security operations and services to enterprise customers for over 18 years. Their mission is to continuously take action to protect our customers' most valuable assets against relentless threats. The Digital Hands composable cybersecurity model allows for custom service design that optimizes the legacy elements of each organization's existing infrastructure investments while allowing for augmentation with today's latest innovations. For more information about Digital Hands, please visit digitalhands.com. A few housekeeping items for today. We encourage everyone to ask questions throughout the presentation via the chat window, and we will get to those questions during the Q&A session at the end. Throughout the presentation, you're going to receive some poll questions. We have 3 of them. So you'll see the pop-up with the question. And when you answer them, the answers will be anonymous, so we won't know who answers what. We do also have a raffle contest set up for today. If you stay until the end of the webinar, you can win a chance for a $25 gift card to Jersey Mike's. We have 2 winners for that. So if you stay during the Q&A session, we will announce those winners. Okay, let's get started here. In today's webinar, we plan to cover the inner workings of the dark web and what is considered to be hell on the World Wide Web. We will share real-life case studies, the future threat landscape we face, how threat intelligence identifies a cyber attack before it happens, and implementing basic cybersecurity best practices to help mitigate the risks of getting caught in the dark web. Our co-presenters today are Ron Frechette from GoldSky Cybersecurity and Jeff Multz from Digital Hands. So I'm going to hand it over to Jeff for a quick introduction.
Thank you, Keith and Ron. It's an honor and privilege to be here with all of you today. Thank you for attending. We're going to deliver an action-packed webinar to deliver true value to your organizations and educate you to the true workings of the underbelly. I've been doing these kinds of talks, especially the dark web talks, for the past 20 or so years in cyber, and I've done this on a global scale. Most recently returned from Japan, having spent 5 years over there, where you have the 3 evil empires literally an hour and a half away from the Japan Peninsula. So thank you again, and I look forward to enlightening all of you with my buddy and partner, Ron. I'll turn it over to him now.
All right, thanks, Jeff, and thanks everyone for coming. Keith, thank you so much for moderating and getting all the technical aspects of the webinar set up for today. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ron Frechette. I serve as CEO here at GoldSky. In our world, that is Chief Evangelist Officer. And that's because as we began the journey to help small and mid-sized businesses, one of the things that we quickly learned was that most SMB owners needed to be educated on how to practice good cyber hygiene. My cybersecurity journey actually began back in 2009 when I went to work for a company by the name of Coal Fire Systems based out of Colorado. They have grown significantly since I was part of that group. But after 5 years of helping large enterprise businesses with their security, privacy, and compliance issues, we began to see the trend of cyber criminals trickling down the supply chain and picking on the little guys. And that's when GoldSky Security was born in 2016. Our core purpose at GoldSky is to educate, transform, and protect our clients, which are, again, primarily small to mid-sized businesses. And just for the purposes of the partnership today, I think what makes GoldSky and Digital Hands such great partners is that GoldSky goes out and identifies the security, privacy, and compliance gaps for our clients, and then Digital Hands comes in and provides the resources necessary to help our clients close those gaps and reduce the risk of a cyber breach. So it's great to be with you today, and look forward to getting into some good stuff.
Good stuff. Thanks, Ron. Why don't we kick things off, believe, with the World Wide Web?
All right. So let me go ahead and again, this is, some of you on this call today may be familiar with this illustration. In the cybersecurity industry, thought leaders typically will use an iceberg to illustrate the 3 levels of the World Wide Web. The top of the iceberg is what we call the surface web. And this is where you'll find search engines like Google and Yahoo, Firefox, etc. Social media sites like Facebook and Instagram that represent basically about 4% of the internet. Then we move down into the deep web. When we get into the deep web, believe it or not, this is about 90% of the World Wide Web. So let me kind of give you a for instance. Let's say decide I'm going to do some online banking. I put in, I go to a URL that's my bank, and then I put in my username and password. Well, as soon as I hit that send button, I have just entered the deep web. And this is where you're going to see, all kinds of government records, legal records, a lot of private information. It should be secured, and then the final level is the dark web. And it makes up about 6% of the World Wide Web. It's used primarily for illicit purposes. But again, we're talking about the truth about the dark web today. I will tell you that there are some things that the dark web is used for that is actually good. For instance, people who are oppressed in third world countries who risk losing their life if they share what their governments are doing to their people could be in danger. You've got reporters that are out there trying to report on top secret issues. So they'll use the dark web to go ahead and do that. The only way to enter the dark web is through what we call a Tor browser. And let's go ahead and talk about that now. So what is Tor, right? So a Tor browser, Tor actually stands for the onion router. And the reason that the US Naval Research Labs, who actually developed the Tor browser, named it that is because it's a very sophisticated, multi-layered encryption platform that they developed back in the mid-90s. And then they flipped it over to DARPA. And if anyone knows anything about DARPA, that's when it gets deep, secret, and really weird, right? So DARPA took on the onion router or the Tor browser. So if you look at Tor, it's comprised into 2 parts. You've got the software that you can download that allows you to use the internet anonymously. And then there's this volunteer network of computers, what we call nodes, that are all across the world. And there's over 10,000 now, and they're recruiting these volunteer nodes to come in on a monthly basis to this very day. Okay, so we've got this is the first survey question, right? So the question is, have you ever downloaded a Tor browser onto your system?
Click yes or no, please, and submit. Wow.
All right. You're lucky it's anonymously, because those are the guys that said yes.
Roy.
All right, so how does this Tor browser work? So let's talk about that. And ladies and gentlemen, we're getting ready to actually take you into the darknet as soon as we finish this slide. So the way that this works is, let's say Alice has a Tor browser loaded onto her PC. She will go ahead, she will send an email. It encrypts it, and then it randomly bounces it throughout all of those nodes that I described earlier. And nobody knows which node it's going to. It's kind of like if you think about a pinball inside of a pinball machine. It's going to bounce all different types of places. And then as it moves throughout the Tor network, the onion, again, it's very, very sophisticated, multi-layered encryption platform. So what it does is it will go ahead and eventually get to the other side, and it will, at that point, decrypt information so that Bob can actually see what it is. Or if they're going to a destination, again, it's all anonymously done. As a matter of fact, when I did this demo that you're about to see, it showed that I was some guy in Uzbekistan.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and I was actually sitting right here in Orlando, Florida. So you never know who what is going to pop out the other side. So that said, Keith, you ready? Let's go ahead and run the demo. And I will say, as he's loading that up, I was a little nervous.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our live demonstration of how to enter the darknet. And as you can see, I've already uploaded the Tor browser or downloaded the Tor browser just to save us on some time. So I'll go ahead and double click that. It's going to take just a few seconds here. Uploading the Tor browser. So here we are. So this is the Tor browser. This is the onion router that I had mentioned earlier. And as you can see, it basically says you're now free to browse the internet anonymously. It gives you some tips on how to stay anonymous here, how to browse the user manual. If you want to become a Tor relay node or volunteer your services, make a donation is here. But again, I want to try to get through this quickly because my anxiety level is a little high right now, being the fact that we're going to get into some nasty stuff. So the first thing that we do is we want to go to what we call the hidden wiki. This is basically a directory of all of the darknet sites that are hidden, as you can see. So we'll just pop that right up. Again, it takes a little bit of time because, as you know, as we explained, it's bouncing around like a pinball inside of a pinball machine, encrypted. So here we go. So these are the web links that basically I can have access to. These are all hidden in the deep net, or the deep dark net, I should say. There's financial resources, commercial services. If you look, you can see where, let's say we wanted to get some fake IDs, fake citizenship to the US. There's hitmen for hire somewhere around here. This is the drug market. So if I wanted to buy some illegal drugs, Silk Road is the firm that, or the syndicate that was worth about $1 billion, and a gentleman by the name of Ross Ulbricht was convicted of 4 consecutive life sentences because he was the admin behind all that. As you can see, as we go down, there's all kinds of blogs. I'll warn you, if you ever try to get in here, there's a lot of F-bombs being thrown out. It's just really, really nasty. Forums and chans, email and messaging. Here's where you get into some of the political sites. Hacker for hire here, rent a hacker. So if there are companies that try to do bad things to their competitors, and they'll hire hackers to go in and mess them up. We actually have a client that experienced some of that. Getting into Juarez, this is basically all pirated software programs. And then it gets into drug and then erotic, hard candy, blah, 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 jailbait. And I don't even want to get into all that. So let's just jump right in. We're going to go right into Silk Road. Silk Road is actually a lot of these dark net sites they come up, they go down, they come up, go down, because they're always trying to evade law enforcement. So let's see if we can figure out how to get access to Silk Road. And usually you have to jump through a couple of hoops to get in there. All right, so guide on how to access Silk Road. This is 3.0, as you can see, because they'll shut this one down after a little bit once they feel that the FBI or Interpol or whoever is getting close to them, and they will basically stand up a different site. So this is basically a step-by-step guide, the tools that you're going to need on how to get into Silk Road. Again, trying to sell you VPNs, become anonymous. This is basically the URL to download the Tor browser. And then here we go. This is going to get us right into Silk Road. So I'm going to go ahead and press this. It's going to take a sec. It's going to, again, these are some of the hoops that you typically have to jump through. It's going to make us do a little bit of CAPTCHA. Let's see here. So, okay. Usually it's 2 or 3 times. Just give it a second. Again, it's trying to protect anonymity. And here we go. Wow, one time. Sometimes it takes a little while. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the darknet. We are actually live inside of Silk Road 3.1, where you can buy the purest crack cocaine that you want. Actually, they're even giving one away for free. There's all kinds of crazy stuff here. Looks like LSD. That's the weekly featured drug. Adderall. And once we get down here, again, a lot of drugs. Here's where we get into stolen credit cards. There's all kinds of stuff here that you can see that is basically being, this is all basically data that has been stolen and is being sold. So all of these cyber criminals that are out there stealing all of your healthcare data or your legal data, this is where they come to sell it. Not specifically Silk Road. Could be. Oh, here's some counterfeit cash for $10,000 for $350. That's a deal. And by the way, you have to buy all this in Bitcoin so that can't be traced either. So they really kind of have this down. Here's some fresh credit card Amex Discover cards, some physical, original physical documents, US ID cards, PayPal. Sometimes what they'll do is they'll actually sell ways that you can go in and start infiltrating other people's networks and databases and kind of hack into them. So they actually sell you the toolkit for hacking. So we're going to go to one more page before we decide to get out of here, because again, my anxiety level is a little high. Amsterdam, let's see, anything else? Oh, pure heroin. Again, a lot of drugs that we're seeing here. Xanax. ATM hacking system. How about that? So if you want to get into the ATM hacking business, there you go. $15, right? It gives you all the tools that you need to do that. So again, this is hell on the internet. And this is one of literally thousands of websites that you can access to if you decide that you want to step over into the dark side. So with that, I'm going to get out of here. And just a full disclaimer, this is not a guide on how to access the darknet and do things illegally. It's not illegal to enter the darknet. It is illegal to execute on a purchase in the darknet. So this is exclusively an educational guide to help you understand what happens after your data has been compromised, where it goes, and how it is being distributed amongst the criminal world. So I am going to stop the presentation now.
Yeah. And so, ladies and gentlemen, again, that disclaimer at the end, this is not a video on how to, get into the darknet. And that was some advice from our friends at the FBI. I will tell you that I did reach out to a buddy of mine at the FBI who is a part of our ISC Squared Central Florida chapter about this, because they wanted us to do it live during this conference, and we were like, no. So we had to record it. But the one thing he did say is anyone that's downloading Tor browsers, they're typically on a list. And so that's when you will start being watched. To what level, to what degree, we don't know. But so again, I just want to just tell you that if you get in there, you just be very, very careful. You never know what's going to happen. So
So what do you think?
Yeah. So what do you think? This is another survey question here.
Survey 2. Gulp. There you go. A third. That's me.
A third. That's great. All right. So at this point, what I'd like to do is hand it over to Mr. Multz and talk to us a little bit about who these threat actors are, Jeff, and what their motivations are, please.
Yeah, this is the part. It's bad enough to know it exists, but what are they really after? Who are these dudes, dudettes, groups, organized or not? Of course, you have the conventional wisdom around organized crime orgs have moved from the Guido Sarducci and the guns of Chicago days. Now it's all underneath, literally in the dark net. You have large syndicates of attackers, multi-country organized crime. You may have a couple in America, a couple in Uzbekistan, and a couple in Japan, a couple in China, and they may be one cohesive group working together. And then these groups often work together with other groups, sort of like today's mafia is the easiest way to call it that. Then, as I learned firsthand, it was just very surreal living in Tokyo, literally an hour-and-a-half flight from Russia, China, and North Korea. If you aren't sure, just look at a map and it's like played with my head. Here I am in America, we think we're so far away, and then I'm there and it's not so much. But you have state-sponsored attackers, organized crime, stealing any kind of secrets, any kind of business, any size business. No one is exempt. You're on the internet, you're done. Unless you do certain things, which we'll talk about later. But it's the conventional wisdom, but it's also bad guys in good countries. There are bad guys and girls in the United States or Canada or wherever you are. It's not immune to any part of the planet. Script kiddies. This is the era I grew up in and Ron did, where they were doing it for fun. Hacker stripes, if you will. They're motivated by fame. How fast could my worm travel the world in the former era when the internet was born? What tools and scripts can I then sell? So it's actually big business for script kiddies too. And then average everyday citizens. You have neighbors attacking neighbors. You have companies attacking companies. And it's not just other country companies attacking US, okay? We're not the victims. We can be the causers of these acts as well. And let's not forget hacktivists. If you offend anyone in business, politically or otherwise, you could be the effect or receiver of a hacktivist attack. Greenpeace used to be this era that I grew up in, but the reality is now it's everyone that has any political agenda or any statement of fact or viewpoint, you can be attacked. Anonymous is the largest and most notorious of these groups, but there's bazillions of these. It is not just anonymous. Social causes, okay? So what is their motivation? So this is the hardest thing to confront. I call it the confront of evil. A lot of it is money. You'll see this as a repeating theme, but it's not solely that. So you have organized crime. Of course, it's about money, but it's about human trafficking, a very disturbing part if you have kids or you know of anyone ever associated or receiving this heinous act. You have control of criminal channels. Yeah, Ron.
I was just going to jump in as it relates to money. I think I shared this with you a few months back. I was looking at a chat inside the darknet, and there was a gentleman that was basically bragging that he and his daughter had successfully compromised $10 million through ransomware, malware, this and that, and they were retiring. 10 million bucks. They were retiring. That's how sophisticated this dark web is becoming.
It is, and you'll hear the profitability of these kinds of crimes exceed drug-related crimes, although you just saw on the dark web where they're selling drugs. So where it's blurred, who knows where it starts and ends. State-sponsored attackers, you have cyber warfare, you have espionage, and you have spying acts occurring every single day. It's not just America or America not attacking someone else, but it is state-sponsored. It's a bigger game, and you have to think this way. So you say, why me? Well, why not you? You're on the internet, you're not secure, you're gonna be attacked. And it could be a state-sponsored attack if you're in the supply chain of military or money. And then we have the script kiddies again. They are often, but not exclusively, seeing what they can do and get away with. It's entertainment to them. Entertainment. Who can I take down? Who can I blister their website or do damage to their reputation? It's about fame and glory. But as Ron just said, does there involve money? Yes, sometimes. And then you have average everyday citizens. And this is the part that COVID probably will change going forward. It is a desperate time. Before this, it was about scorned spouses and cyberbullying. I saw a lot of that, unfortunately, in the kids' middle-aged schools. Drugs and other illegal activity, trading hands, buying, selling, using. But I have a new point here for all of us to be ever recognizing, and this is a sad state of the affairs. There's a lot of desperate people out of jobs trying to make a living, and they've turned to these crimes because they can't find a job, or their states or countries are locking them down and they're being prevented from making mortgages or rent payments. So it's an interesting change of our societal issues that can cause an uptick, and it has in this area. And lastly, the hacktivists, yet again, it's power in numbers. They're making a statement of fact. They're motivated by social causes that they're representing or feel have been offended.
Yeah, and I'm sure that everyone in the audience here today, you know, as far as state sponsored, you're seeing with all the political stuff going on, everyone blaming Russia and China, and it's just madness.
Finger pointing, yeah, it's a crazy time. So here's the what's in it, why for you, okay? The information available. Now, this is the scary stuff. We're in Halloween time. I'm making light. We're in a dark background. This is a dark setting, but this is the deep, dark truth, if you will, that you've never been told, or maybe you're unwilling to confront. So thank you for being brave and joining us today. So what information is available? I think you're going to know some of this. I get credit card fraud on my credit card. I got a daughter in Japan, and people are stealing stuff, you know, all over the place. So you have personal information, PII, stolen credentials from subscribed services. You have the Netflix and the Disney and the this and the that and the Hulus and the, you get the idea. How many credentials do you have, and how many have been already stolen? And do you change your passwords a lot? You're going to hear this as a repeating theme. I change mine every month. Then, of course, you check your Equifax, Experian, TransUnion if you're an American. Your social security information, your DMV info, your complete identities, your healthcare information. Oh my gosh. Fraud, fraud, fraud. How are you on planet Earth and not having this happen? I have to replace my credit cards every 3 to 6 months in this era, and it's gotten worse. My bank calls me, or I'm receiving a letter from someone that I visited or did a purchase, and my data might have been compromised. Are you kidding me?
And what is it with us security guys, Jeff? They seem to really want to pick on us. You know what I mean?
Know. Damn, I'm out there with you, bud.
All the time, man.
Multz, Frechette, let's go get them.
Yeah.
So, of course, you have compromises and money stolen and fraud that you have to watch. How many of you want a real life and enjoy your day-to-day instead of dealing with this stuff? So your credit card, your bank account, your whole identities, you have to be paranoid, not trust but verify, but know diligently things are going to happen every month. Your business information. So now you're a business owner, you're an employee of a business, you shop in businesses, you go to a restaurant as a business, you go to a hospital as a business. Your data is everywhere. And hacking activity is not going down. There are record frauds occurring, and this is the why and the how of this webinar. So as Ron said, this is the most mind-boggling part. The illegal marketplaces are not shrinking. You saw Tor, a brief, pardon the tour of the tour, but what is available in the dark web that's hidden? How many marketplaces for drugs? That was mind-boggling. Silk Road. You got Wabi Sabi Lobby and all these other illicit sites. I could go through thousands of them. You can go to Tor and see some of them. Weapons, of course, there's guns, knives, blah, blah, blah. You can practically buy planes online. Crazy. You can buy radar. You can buy bazookas. This is a crazy time. And then you have illegal services. Now, you think we love SaaS, you know, software as a service. You got O365, Salesforce.com, your favorite real estate package.com. Well, guess what the bad guys do? GetHacked.com, you know, rent a service, rent a malware for the day. You can bid on this. Wabi Sabi Lobby's like the eBay of malware. I can buy a worm today for $22 this morning. Now, by the end of the day, it'll be $200, but you know, stick it on my credit card. I'm just kidding. You would use your Bitcoin or alternative currency. And then you have content. Oh my God, Ron showed that in the tour. There's videos, there's music, there's all sorts of content that these great artists have created, but are being stolen and resold and not paying the original artist. I'm not here to pontificate, but let me get it. Anything can be bought through Tor and the dark web. Video camera footage, this is where Ron and I were chatting personally, and I'll let Ron share an anecdote on this.
Which one specifically?
The camera, the video camera that.
Oh yeah, that's
yeah.
right. Well, I
Oh
mean,
my
I'm
God.
sure that everybody here, if you haven't seen the Ring Central compromise, where the Ring doorbell, where they had cameras throughout the whole system, and there was somebody basically spying on the little girl and just scaring the living daylights out of her by going, "Hello, it's Santa Claus."
Yeah.
Right? And this is, again, that's a whole the world of IoT, the Internet of Things, which is a whole nother webinar in of itself, right? But
Yes, it is, Ron.
Scary stuff.
IoT and IoE, Internet of Everything. Oh my gosh. So be cognizant of this. And we'll talk about that and the what to look for and what to do shortly. But when you have these activities, you have to think like a bad guy to beat a bad guy or lady. Pictures, audio, your phone can be hacked easily. Turn it off. Don't just leave it somewhere else. Don't put it near your bedstand. You know what I'm saying here. I'm not saying electric and all this pontification, but I'm telling you, phones can be easily hacked, and all the videos and pictures you have can be easily stolen.
That's right.
So what is the impact? I think you all have some kind of impact. I really have to believe and trust in this, okay? I received a notice this morning. Some bank had a compromise. Thank God it wasn't mine. I had an account with them a long, long time ago and shut it at least 12 years ago, but they're still sending it to everybody. So your complete identity stolen, your financial ruin, your damaged reputation, these are both business and personal. On the business side, this one cannot be understated. Your brand damage. People say, well, yeah, not so much, but reputational, I could talk about the valuations and the recovery period and shareholder revolts and lawsuits. Look at Equifax and how many bazillions of dollars they've had to pay out and continue to pay out and continue to pay out, and Target and Home Depot. We can keep going on and on and on. There are lawsuits. There are shareholders. There are purchasers. There are compromisees. There are civil and criminal liabilities. Fines. Ron's org focuses and is a huge advocate of helping SMBs with their audit compliance. It's the same. You have fines and penalties for not being compliant. You're not compliant when you have a breach, folks. I'm sorry. It's a bad day, perhaps a bad week. And as Ron knows, the time and resources to recover from a breach, it takes many weeks and months. And sometimes it's never recovered, like data. So please don't pay the fines or ransomwares, because rarely do you really get your data back. And they probably have a copy, and we'll talk about the other impacts thereof.
Awesome. All right, Jeff, thank you so much for that. You scared the living bejesus out of me. And
Sorry.
the attendees. So hopefully we have everyone's undivided attention, right?
Yeah.
So that said, ladies and gentlemen, what I'd like to do now is just kind of, have you ever wondered what you look like in cyberspace? We call this our digital footprint. So every time you hit the send button, what happens is your IP address sends packets of data into cyberspace to another digital footprint, a destination that you've chosen to send it to, right? Could be your bank if you're doing online banking, could be a proposal to a client, could be, you know, to the IRS, whatever it is. And you'll notice that these digital footprints, there's literally hundreds of millions of them floating around in cyberspace at any given time. They come in all shapes and sizes. These bigger guys here could be the IRS or Amazon. The little guys could be us, right? So let's take one of these footprints and let's put one under the microscope and kind of dissect it a little bit. So you'll notice the lock in the middle there. Well, this is where all of our sensitive data resides, right? So this would be credit card data, could be personal, as Jeff mentioned, personal PII, personal identifiable information, protected health information or PHI. And by the way, that's like cyber gold to cyber criminals because they can take your healthcare information and parse it up and do all kinds of different things with it. And it has a much longer shelf life than, let's say, a stolen credit card with a PIN. And then client data. So you'll notice that circle around where all your sensitive data resides with a lock is, this is your security perimeter. So this is where we need to insert all of these security controls to prevent these guys, right? From getting a hold of our sensitive data. Now you'll notice around that security perimeter, all those lines around the security perimeter represent data constantly coming in and leaving your network, right? Or users coming in and leaving your network at any given time. All right, so how are these cyber thugs trying to get a hold of our sensitive data? Ladies and gentlemen, they're throwing everything in the kitchen sink at us. Last year, there were about 180,000 malware variants, like you see around this footprint, coming into cyberspace on a daily basis, right? Worms, viruses, brute force attacks, ransomware, you name it, DDoS, it's out there, right? So there's 4 threat vectors around that security perimeter that we are trying to protect. The first one are your people. So you got to ask yourself, if you have employees or you are an employee, how aware are you of all these malware variants that are being unlaunched or launched into cyberspace daily? How do you behave when you're confronted with one? Are you a defense or a liability, right? The second threat vector are considered your processes. So this starts at the top, especially for SMBs. Are the C-level executives of the organization educated on how to practice good cyber hygiene? And do they have proper policies and procedures in place? And when we say policies and procedures, it's not the template package that you buy for $700. You download it and then you hit cut and paste and you put your company name in there. No, this is customizing the procedures that fit specifically to your organization. Every industry has different threat vectors that they need to be concerned about, and making sure that your employees read those procedures and sign the fact that I understand what I need to do from a procedural standpoint if I'm confronted with a specific scenario. The third threat vector are your physical controls, right? So if you have a server on-prem, do you have it under lock and key? Do you have a log that shows anybody that's leaving or entering that facility? And do you have the proper access controls in place? And then the fourth threat vector are your technologies. So for instance, if one of these cyber criminals were able to infiltrate technologies, I know it's coming. There it is. All right. So networks, right? If somebody were to get into, compromise that security perimeter and they have all this sensitive data, do you have it properly segmented? In other words, you've got firewalls in place so that they have to really work hard to get to your sensitive data. Are your applications being patched when they should? Are your emails encrypted in transit and at rest? Have you vetted your cloud mobile service providers to make sure they have the proper compliance attestations behind them, i.e. SOC 2, ISO, etc. And then do you have firewalls and intrusion prevention properly inserted into your environment? And do you even have your AV turned on? You'd be amazed at how many of our clients have it, but they just never turned it on.
That's right.
So if you'll notice all the black spots around that circle, right? Those are what we call gaps, ladies and gentlemen. And this all starts by doing the security risk assessment. And that's where we start our journey with our clients is let's baseline your digital footprint. Let's see where these gaps are. And then once we identify where the gaps are, our objective is to help you close those bad boys. And again, this is where digital hands comes into play to help us help our clients do that. So the question we would ask you to ask yourselves is, how secure is your digital footprint?
Exactly. Challenge.
All right. So what's the problem here?
Not any.
Okay, so there's three issues, right? The first one is hackers are now picking on the little guys, like I mentioned at the top of our webinar today, right? The big guys are getting their arms around security, which makes it more difficult to get in there. So what they're doing is working their way down the supply chain, and they're picking on the little guys, and it's like shooting fish in a barrel by and large. Also, the second issue that we have is that state and federal compliance regulators, they've been preaching this stuff, especially in the enterprise world, for many, many years, and they're starting to impose fines and penalties now. It's been over a decade that a lot of these compliance frameworks are put in place. They gave everybody a lot of time to get their arms around their programs. Now they're actually starting to impose fines and penalties. And then the third one is just literally just basic cyber hygiene awareness and just educating people. Now, a lot of these SMB companies, when they first get confronted with this, they think, oh man, this is gonna be really hard to implement. It's gonna be expensive. Not the case. And we can help you with that once you begin the journey. And then another common misperception that we see is that a lot of SMB companies will utilize IT managed service providers. And when we ask how secure they are, they're like, oh no, our MSP's got us. We're all good. We're locked down. And that is true to a certain extent, ladies and gentlemen, but there's a lot of issues internally within the organization that need to be looked at and considered. So those are the issues, three biggest problems that we see. Next slide.
So here we go. How are you, as a business, responding to these issues? So, question for you to consider here. Those that are not doing much today, are you taking the ostrich approach? Ignore the problem and hope it goes away. That's option one. Or option two, panic. Spending all the right money in all the wrong places. Just find the first hole. As Ron said, that was an organized approach, but are you just freaking out? So where do you fall? Left, nothing, right, panic.
Think about it.
Think about it, yes. Ron, now you get to...
Okay, here we go. So let's talk about what's happening from an overall perspective as far as adoption for small, mid-sized businesses. So ladies and gentlemen, if you look at this market bell curve here, what you'll see is that the left side shows where the innovators are, which, in the SMB world, as far as adoption for cybersecurity and practicing good cyber hygiene, really started seeing that in 2015. GoldSky came on the scene in 2016, again, with our mission only to focus on the SMB world. And I'll tell you, it was pretty flat. There was a lot of educating and evangelizing going on. But then all of a sudden in 2018, we started seeing that the big enterprise companies were beginning, their auditors were coming in and saying, hey, you guys look good, but how secure are your vendors, your partners? And that's when you started seeing these security questionnaires start coming out from your larger clients. And then at that point, we started getting calls saying, hey, I really need some help doing this. So we're just now starting to see the adoption with the early adopters. So this is good news for the SMB world, especially for the people that are on this call today, being the fact that you're actually an early adopter if you take action now as it relates to cybersecurity adoption in the SMB world. You don't want to be on the other side of the curve, ladies and gentlemen, and be one of those laggards, because then you're going to be motivated by the fact that your brand has been damaged. You're paying, fines and penalties, and now you've got to, invest in good cyber hygiene practices. Do it on the front side. I promise you, it will become a market advantage for you, because a lot of these companies are still living with their head in the sand, and you need to start being proactive and start on the journey of practicing good cyber hygiene.
Absolutely. It's not turn it on, turn it off. It's a journey.
Yeah, it is. It's a journey, not a destination, unfortunately. All right, so primary objectives to mitigate risk. So there's actually 3 of them. There's 3 things we want to try to help you do. The number 1 thing is not get breached, right? Avoid compromise. The second thing is let's look at your compliance frameworks. Like if you're in healthcare, you've got HIPAA compliance. If you process credit cards, you are in the PCI realm, right? So the objective here is to make sure that you are achieving your compliance mandates to avoid, again, fines and penalties. And then how can we do this affordably, right? These are the 3 primary objectives. So how do we do that? Well, the right approach is evaluate. It's all about risk, ladies and gentlemen. You have to evaluate, identify, and manage your risk. So how do we do that? In our world, what we do is we utilize the National Institute for Standards and Technology, which is basically a compliance framework that was built by the federal government. And it offers a methodology of which you go through a process of evaluating your risks as it relates to people, processes, facilities, and technologies. So what happens is when the federal government builds these compliance frameworks, what will happen is they default to the private sector, which I'll show you on this next slide here. Go ahead and hit that one, Keith. So NIST is the mothership, but if you're probably familiar with some of these other compliance frameworks, well, they all stem from the mothership, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technologies. And again, you're starting to see more and more industry-specific compliance frameworks come into the fold as this whole digital age is maturing. Next slide, please. All right, so let's talk about a cyber risk management system. So when we first got into this SMB space, again, what we realized quickly was that nobody could even spell cyber by and large. Now, mind you, this was back in 2015, 2016. So we had to really boil this down and make it easy to understand and easy to implement. And so we spent a couple of weeks on a whiteboard and we came up with what we call today our Dream Secure Cyber Risk Management System. So it boils down to 5 basic steps, ladies and gentlemen. The first step is you got to diagnose that. Remember that digital footprint I showed you? That's the golden one in the center there, right? That's how we want to get you there. We want you to have the golden digital footprint. So the first step is diagnose that digital footprint by doing that risk assessment. Once we do that and we've identified those gaps, now we got to move into remediation mode. So at this point, we're going to give you a remediation roadmap to allow you to begin with a very specific recipe for how to close the gaps we identified. And then we transition into the engage phase. This is where Digital Hands comes in and is a very, very effective partner for us because there are some gaps that you can only close by bringing in a managed security services provider. And Digital Hands has all of those resources for many of our clients. So we put that plan into action. We engage those managed security service providers. And then after a period of time, we're going to move into audit phase, which is phase 4. This is where now we look at that remediation plan and we're going to test those gaps to make sure that they've actually been closed and then determine what the residual risk looks like. And residual risk, we got to figure out, okay, what do we want to do with this risk that's left over? Do we want to continue to mitigate it? Do we want to transfer that risk by maybe using some cyber insurance, or do we want to accept it? And then the last phase, which is also where Digital Hands comes into this model, is making sure that you're monitoring your endpoints 24/7, 365. That's when we say you're golden. And ladies and gentlemen, keep in mind that this is a journey. It's not a destination. So I always tell people when we share the Dream Secure model with them that wash, rinse, and repeat. Right? You could be doing this on an annual basis, these 5 steps, or if you have a major infrastructure change. And just as a side note, to the left there, you'll notice that's the NIST CSF framework that came out, I just have to say it, after we had launched Dream Secure, and we were like, oh, wow, it kind of looks like ours. Maybe they used our stuff, the federal government. So we're a little humbled by that.
Love it.
Anyways, okay, next slide. Okay, so this is just a sample of a letter of completion. So many of our clients, because remember I was sharing that their bigger customers are saying, hey, we need to know you're doing this. So what we'll do is when we do a security risk assessment, I think this one was for HIPAA. Yeah, we'll do a letter of completion on our letterhead so they can send that to their their clients, stakeholders, partners that are making sure that they're actually on this. And that usually helps to buy some time, if you will.
So now we'll talk about, so we've defined the problem statement. We defined the underbelly of the dark net of the internet. And now what can you do? I hate providing problems with no solutions. On the personal side, please don't reuse your passwords. That means one site, one password, another site, a different password, and therefore you stay out of trouble. Bad guys steal credentials all the time. They're only going to get to one site then, and that's if you didn't change your password on that site. You need a cadence on regular changing of passwords. At work, generally 30 to 60 days max. I'll tell you a little secret, make it a very long password and you can change it a little less frequently, but you still change regularly. Two-factor authentication. A lot of banking sites have now gone to this, credit unions are following and so forth. Please use two-factor wherever something you have, something you know. Your password plus something physical or a CAPTCHA or other two-factor. Leave no default. Oh my God, I cringe. Admin and password as a password and all the standard defaults. Assume your device is compromised already before you ever bought it. When you get it, change the password immediately. When you install, immediately go into the config mode and change it. Least privilege. Don't give full access. Only give access to those things you need when you need them. Every device, everything is not the way to go. And of course, there's paid and free monitoring, but have monitoring occur ongoing 24/7. On the business side, although it's overused, defense in depth, where one layer fails, you need another. And that is absolutely still the case. But the layers need to be coordinated, including, as Ron said many times, network segmentation, perimeter firewalls, including in your clouds, intrusion detection, intrusion prevention, antivirus and endpoint, and be sure it's running. By the way, most malware today, line 1 of the code says turn off AV. Beware of that. Log capture and retention and review. Most people are not logging, they're looking and forgetting. Stuff happens over a duration of time, and you need to go back in time in a window. Patching and vulnerability management is still the simplest, most effective means to defending your networks. And one size does not fit all. There is no perfect tool out there. I'm sorry if software companies want to shoot me or hardware vendors, let them. I'm an equal opportunity offender. And as Ron said, have an IR plan and test it. Don't just dust it off and think you got it. You got to test it ongoing. Good backups, that prevents most ransomware from doing any damage to you. If you had good backups and a restore and a disaster recovery plan, and test them again. And I'm going to add, per today's segment, dark web monitoring. That means for you, your brand, your data, your credentials, your partners, your supply chain, your whole entity should have dark web monitoring.
And Jeff, I'm looking forward to these next slides here because you're going to walk us through. Yeah, okay. All you, buddy.
No worries. So intelligence, the oxymoron of all. So you could have intelligence or you could have applied intelligence. I think you want applied intelligence so that you can have proactive security. You want to mitigate or remediate attacks through data analysis, knowing what's coming, not what's already in rear view, already happened. It's collaborative threat intelligence, raw data from multiple sources. There is no pure one sense of truth. It is not about AI and machine learning. That is so overused. Human elements are critical in dissemination, analysis, and application. It is humans against humans. Humans are inventing the bad stuff, so why wouldn't they be involved in fixing or preventing the bad stuff? You need real-time, high-fidelity intelligence. Again, not the general, oh my God, the sky is falling stuff, okay? It's already too late by the time you read it, I promise you. What threatens me, as in you? What's unique to you? Just because it affects 400 other customers does not necessarily mean it will affect you. You have to know what you have to know what your risk is. And Ron said that, and his organization helps understand risk. And you need specific threat intelligence services to get from threat intelligence under the underbelly, the dark web. Not all TI goes into the dark web. Actually, very little does, to be candid. So all data is not the same. No intelligence is all the same, okay? You need truly actionable intelligence. I need data about something that's going to affect me and how I can fix it and do something about it before it happens. An example would be the hypothetical, if you had cameras all over your neighborhood and you knew when any house in your neighborhood got robbed, so that in advance you would know what to defend your house with. Poor guy that got robbed. I'm empathizing with that, but the reality is this is the environment. Someone's going to get attacked. You hope it's not you, and you would like to know it's not going to be you because you've taken the right steps. That's dark web monitoring at its finest. Then understanding what is threatening you specifically allows you to prioritize what is done, how it's done, and in what order. And then targeting alerts from the deep, dark, and surface web is vital to your sanity and your survival on the internet and doing business. So you want your intelligence, not all threat intelligence, please. So wouldn't you like to know if you've already been hacked? And I don't say this as a FUD, fear, uncertainty, doubt. It is very likely at some point, some of your credentials or identities have been stolen. Wouldn't you like to know that? And then what to do about it? If your information is on the dark web, you're in the crosshairs. I can't tell you how many stories I told of organizations we found that we were doing monitoring for, and months in advance before it attacked them, it already attacked their competitor. So it did not affect them, but it did affect the competitor. Find your assets, and know their risk so that you can mitigate that risk. Is your identity or the identities you're protecting, your assets in the wild, and how much are they or you worth in the bad market? Go beyond identities. You have your brand at stake, your bottom line, your profitability, your employees and their reputation, your customers, your supply chain, your sanctity. Identify real-time threats so that you move from reactive to proactive security for the first time in your lives. What it does not do, what this dark web monitoring does not do, is remove information from the dark web or prevent it from being used, but you need to know about it. Knowledge is power. And lastly, I'm sure you realize it's a dangerous place. Let someone else go there instead of you. Ron and I could tell you countless stories. You show up as a target. So here's real life. This is not theoretical. I wanted to add some anecdotes that were real. So you may have read this in the news. This is rear view application of threat intelligence and dark web monitoring. A large public school system was hit with some really nasty ransomware. As you see on the right, it's the Maze, M-A-Z-E, if you want to Google it. It's some of the nastiest ransomware because it wasn't just about ransom and getting paid. They stole data at the same time. It was a smoke screen. Oh my God, we're focusing on handling the ransomware, whereas all the data left. Employees' names, social security numbers, PTA members, details about students. I don't need to tell you what was stolen. There wasn't anything that wasn't stolen. The cybersecurity firm identified this information on the dark web. Not only is this information for sale, it changed hands. It's a whole network of bad guys. So the bad guy group that invented Maze sold it to a group that used it on the school system, so they made money. They sold the credentials to someone else who then sold it 15 times to different vendors that then did the attacks. So 25 different companies or groups made a crap load of money on this one. And then the reputation trust issue of the school system. And it's not one school, it's many. And they violated all sorts of FERPA, so there's lawsuits. There's parental and civil lawsuits. And there's minors at stake here, folks, and that is a crazy kind of civil penalty. And 1 month passed between the ransomware attack and the discovery information. So if you do a timeline, if you were dark web monitoring, you would know 30 days before the actual attack occurred. Imagine that. What could you do in a month in a proactive stance to defend against what was going to happen as a foregone conclusion, and you head it off. It's tomorrow's news today. And the Maze threat group. Yeah, it's amazing, Ron. The Maze threat group did take credit for this in the press, by the way. So the average time to detect, respond to a security incident is 162 hours. Imagine if you had those 162 hours back because you knew the attack was coming. So you have to move from threat, detect, and respond. You want to stop them before they start, before the hack. You can add simple yet sophisticated technologies and services such as email protection for anti-phishing and anti-malware, SIM analysis for log correlation and aggregation, and of course, handle all the compliance Ron's firm handles. Firewall policy, as Ron said, but it's also the monitoring and management 24/7, 365 without fail. It's your endpoints, including antivirus, which is required by most regulatory bodies in the NIST framework. And of course, monitoring and managing the actions, such as isolating that host before it whacks your whole network if it gets infected. And all of this is available in a fully managed offering from Digital Hands. And that's why we partner so well together.
That's right.
And then moving from monitoring and alert, not just reactive, you want visibility into the dark web without getting your hands dirty, if you will. Heads up on credentials and other types of sales on the market. You want to anticipate the attack. We got to get there. And you might think you don't need it or you can't afford it. Both of those are not true. Dark web monitoring is a must, and it can be fully managed and without getting your hands dirty. Imagine that.
Nice. All right, Jeff.
Turn it back over. Oh, we got another survey.
Survey question.
So what drew you to this webinar? Team, folks, attendees?
I would have got fired if I didn't come.
Yeah, there you go. What does the survey say?
Still waiting. All right. Survey says, aha. Interesting. Very cool.
Very cool.
Awesome. All right. So I think we're now at the Q&A session. I did have one specific question come in about why don't we just shut down the Tor browser?
Right.
And Alan, that was a great question. And like I said, we can kind of take some of this offline. I know we're running behind a little bit or over a little bit, but by and large, ladies and gentlemen, remember that the Naval Research Labs developed this really to provide secure communication between all the branches of service. So it was originally designed for us, the United States of America, to secure our communications. And what happened was they ended up opening it up to the public because they wanted additional intelligence and they couldn't tell who was who in the zoo, so to speak. So that's why it was opened up. And so today it's really, the federal government uses this and helps to fund the Tor browser for its own communication purposes, but also to help shut down other criminal organizations. But that's a great question, Alan, and I'm happy to get into that with more detail. Jeff, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I'm fully in agreement. You can't really shut it down. It's also whack-a-mole. You shut one down, there'll be another. And by the way, Tor is not the only access to the dark web. It's an example of. There are thousands and thousands of ways. I use a different type of browser. I don't get in trouble. There's one other question. What is the difference between Norton 360 and Digital Hands dark web monitoring? Okay, that's very summarily the difference between consumer grade, one dude or one family versus a whole organization. We go far deeper and far wider. It's reputational in nature, not just an automated scan or automated rudiments that come back. Now, Norton's great if you're a home user or for yourself, you're curious, pretty cool, but not for an organization. Digital Hands focuses on organizations now of all sizes, from SMB to large enterprise to public school systems. So that's another differential. It's not specific to a human group.
And I guess this one's for me. How much does it cost to perform a security risk assessment? That's a great question. And I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to go lawyer on you and say it depends. No,
Right on.
I will tell you, well, it does depend on, number of locations, the amount of endpoints and scope. So there's a lot of questions that we can, definitely address on a quick discovery call is what we call it. But I will tell you that there is a range, I'd say anywhere between 8 to maybe 15 K is probably a good range, depending on the size and scope of the organization.
Absolutely. I think that's it for now, Ron.
Yeah, any other questions? So again, I know we're over a little bit. Okay, so this is our final funny slide.
Yeah.
And it's, we're trying to really drive a point home here. Passwords like underpants. Change them
often. Keep them private.
And never share them with anybody.
Hey guys, and the winners of the Jersey Mike gift card is Scott Ashlock and Andy Pesca. So thanks, guys. We'll send emails out to you too for those gift cards.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. And if you have any questions or information, please feel free to reach out to Jeff and myself. Jeff, I want to thank you so much. And
thank you, Ron.
Lynn, who Gillespie on your side that helped put all this together. It was a great collaborative effort. Keith, thank you so much for driving this as well. And ladies and gentlemen, we're here for you if you need us. Thank you and make it a great day.